You finish a long day, a full day. Meetings, messages, tasks crossed off a list, maybe even a workout squeezed in somewhere. And you sit down at the end of it, and instead of feeling satisfied, you feel hollow. Not sad, exactly. Not angry, just strangely empty. Like you ran a long race and found out at the finish line that there was never actually a destination. And the strange part is, you can't explain it, because by every visible measure, you're doing fine. You're functioning, you're productive, you're moving. So you tell yourself you're just tired, and you move it along. And tomorrow, the cycle starts again. Most people around you would say you're doing well, and maybe a part of you even believes them. But there's this quiet disconnect between how full your calendar is and how unfull you feel inside. And that gap, that's not laziness and it's not ingratitude. That's something much more specific happening in the mind and body. What we're actually talking about is a phenomenon psychologists sometimes describe as existential busyness, the experience of filling life with activity while simultaneously losing contact with meaning. And it's far more common than anyone talks about, precisely because it hides so well behind the appearance of productivity. Here's what the research reveals. There's a structure deep in the brain called the default mode network. It activates not when you're busy, but when you stop. It's the part of the mind responsible for self-reflection, for processing emotion, for constructing a sense of who you actually are and what actually matters to you. And chronic busyness, the kind that leaves no space for stillness, essentially suppresses that network, not permanently, but consistently enough that over time, a person can lose touch with their own inner life without ever realizing it's happening. A study published in the journal Psychological Science found that people who were given unstructured time and asked to simply sit and think reported profound discomfort, many choosing mild physical discomfort over sitting alone with their thoughts. The mind, conditioned to input and output, begins to experience stillness as a threat rather than a resource. So when the day ends and the tasks stop and the notifications go quiet, the brain doesn't know what to do. It reaches for more stimulation, more scrolling, more planning, more doing, not because the person wants to stay busy, but because somewhere along the way, busyness became the default state, and stillness started to feel wrong. For many people, this pattern didn't start in adulthood. It began much earlier, in environments where worth was tied to productivity, where being helpful, achieving, contributing was how you secured love, approval, or safety. Resting felt selfish. Doing nothing meant something was wrong. The nervous system learned a simple, lasting equation. Movement equals value. Stillness equals risk, and that equation gets carried quietly into adult life, disguised as ambition, efficiency, drive. None of this is a character flaw. It's an adaptation, a very intelligent one given the environment it was built inside. The body learned to survive by staying in motion. The problem is that what protects us in one context can quietly exhaust us in another. And this is worth saying clearly. There is no moral hierarchy here. Some people are genuinely wired for more external stimulation. Some move through the world at a slower internal pace. Neither is superior. But when the pace you're living at was never actually chosen, when it was built out of fear, out of old conditioning, out of a world that never gave you permission to stop, that's when it starts to cost something real. Here's the layer most people miss. The emptiness isn't a sign that your life lacks meaning. It's often a sign that meaning exists, but you've been moving too fast to feel it. Emotions, real ones, need a few seconds to register. Connection needs more than a moment to land. The satisfying sense of a life well lived doesn't come from doing. It comes from the brief pause after doing, where the experience actually gets to become memory. When you skip that pause consistently, you keep living, but you stop accumulating the felt sense of a life. You're present physically, absent internally. That's not emptiness as a permanent condition. That's emptiness as a signal, a quiet, persistent message from the deeper mind that something it needs has been skipped for too long. And you are not broken for being here. This isn't a failure. The fact that you can feel the gap between movement and meaning, that you can sense something is missing even when nothing is objectively wrong, that's actually a form of self-awareness most people spend years trying to develop. If there's one practical shift worth trying, it's this. At the end of each day,
Before picking up your phone or turning on something to watch, give yourself 3 minutes of deliberate nothing. Not meditation, not journaling, not reflection with a goal. Just 3 minutes of no input. Let the mind wander without direction. It will feel uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is exactly what you're trying to befriend, because inside it is the beginning of contact with yourself, with the day you actually lived, with what genuinely matters underneath all the motion. It sounds too small to matter, but the research suggests that even brief, consistent periods of unstructured mental rest begin to restore the default mode network's function, and with it, a slow, quiet return to the feeling that life is not just happening around you, but being lived by you. If this felt like something you already knew but had never heard said out loud before, there's a reason for that. And there's more beneath the surface worth understanding about why certain minds are built the way they are, and what that reveals about the kind of life that would actually feel like enough.